G'day, guys. Customary little sip of the coffee to get this one rolling. No analogies. I'll put those in the bin. For the time being, there'll be time and a place for an analogy. It's Monday, and like most Carlton supporters, this one is I don't know, you constantly think about this one. And the problem with this, well, it's not a problem. I don't, for 1 minute, think this defines us moving forward, or this will have an impact in the way we, but it will never be erased. These are the types of games that will never be erased, and that's footy. That's you remember these ones as much as you remember, when you maybe steal a game. And I'm not saying for 1 minute Melbourne steal this game. It takes not an incredible team, but a team with belief and a really strong core group who for not 1 minute would have panicked in that situation. And as much as I sort of don't like him, but he would be, if he was at Carlton, I would really like him. And he sort of, I don't know, gives me the shits at times just listening to him. But Max Gawn he's a great captain. Well, yeah, he's a great captain and a great leader and a terrific footballer. And up the other end of the ground, another bloke that probably shits a lot of opposition supporters as well is Jake Lever. And I don't think Jake Lever had a great game on Saturday night, but he was involved in that last passage of play. And I've heard him talk, and I've seen up close when I've been live at Melbourne games, and he's such a general, Jake Lever, and I think this is everything that makes Melbourne such a force at the moment, is that core group of not necessarily leaders, because we often think about leaders as captains and vice captains and leadership groups, but that core group of players that are calm, composed, know what's required, know what they're doing. And don't get me wrong, Melbourne have been on the end of these sort of losses, and they may be on the end of these sort of losses in the future, throughout the finals. This happens to all teams, but there's no fluke. There was no luck that they won that game of football. No luck at all. And I would like to think that final 2 or 3 minutes, whatever it was all about experience. And I would love to think that those 22 players that took the field for us on Saturday night, I would hope to think that all of those players have a long future at our football club, and that those 22 players will be part of something hopefully really exciting for our team moving forward. But I don't know. I don't know. And I'm not pointing the finger at anyone, and I've heard some things about straight after the game, and I know emotions run high for some fans, but after the game, the amount of abuse that was centred towards Jack Newnes, who was playing on Keziah Pickett, was extraordinary. Unbelievable, the amount of abuse that he copped. Yeah, it's just shameful, really. But as I've said in the past, every player on that ground every player on that ground, the 22, will feel responsible for what happened in that last 3 minutes. They have to. And as I said, I would like to think it comes down to experience and having those calm heads. Because I got no doubt if Melbourne were in that same situation and they got the 8 points up with 2 or 3 minutes remaining, they would have known what to do. And I think we knew what to do. It's just we weren't able to execute it. Be interested now moving forward to see how these sort of games play out with us, because it was new. It was new for us. We've had close finishes this year, but this was different. This was real strong. Well, team like Melbourne, who were well structured. The other games we led had big leads against Hawthorn, the Bulldogs, the Swans, Port Adelaide. And we held on in those games. This was different, though. But I have question marks on a lot of players in that regards, and guys that have been around for a long time now as well. This is a team thing. This is a team thing that they need to work through together. Do we have the real steady heads in this football team? Who can you look at moving forward in a situation like this? Again, if it happens, out of our players, who would you love the ball in the hands of in that final 2 to 3 minutes to make the right decisions? I don't know if it's Charlie Curnow. I don't know if it's a Harry Mackay. I don't know if it's a Patrick Cripps. I don't even know if it's a Sam Doherty. And they're big leaders. They're right at the top. So we'll find out again, because this will happen to us again, and this was painful. This was painful. But these, as I said to my mum in the car on the way home from the game, I went with my mum, and I'll repeat, it was a magnificent game of football and a pleasure to be there. A pleasure to be there, because it's what we want and what we need as a football club, to be back in these positions again as much as possible. We need to be there, and we need to even experience what it's like, what it's like. We've had bad losses in the past when we were a weak football team, but it didn't hurt as much as this because the stakes weren't as high. And when the stakes are high, you're sort of getting there. You're sort of getting there. And that's why this one will sting. And it will linger. I think Michael Voss will focus on everything will be positive. It has to be. Everything will be positive throughout the week. There will not be any negative talk, and it will all be focused on what we did so well. And there was a lot we did so well. And we really took it up to the reigning premiers, who I think are putting in a really strong sort of title defence. I really do. I think I think they were pretty much at full strength looking at that team. And look, they've got some deficiencies up forward. I think a lot of teams, most teams, will have certain areas that they'd like to improve. But I think they're in pretty good shape, Melbourne. And I couldn't wait to face them to see how we would fare. And as much as the last 2 weeks have been really inconsistent in regards to, I don't know about effort. Let's not talk about effort all the time. Effort, when you talk about effort, it sort of feels like you're not trying. I don't know, maybe intensity, whatever that may be. But this was great. This fucking contest from start to finish. Tight, back and forward, back and forward. ebbs and flows. And just when you thought Melbourne might flex their muscles, we would find a way, we would find a way to get back into that game, which would make you feel like, shit, we're in with a show here. And the challenges really that our team faced pre-game, losing Chera, not that he'd been in good form, but, having to bring in Setterfield and what we were going to do with that and what that would look like. And then to see Doc lining up in the midfield, and whether that was specifically planned before Chera went out, I'm not quite sure, but I think it would have been. We were talking about possibly Stocker going in there or even a Jack Martin, but it was Doc. And it made us, we were forced to do something a little bit different, and it appeared to have worked. And I don't know about you, but I sense a slight change in the way we're playing at the moment. And I sort of take a look a little bit at the stats. And, I take it back, even last week, and it wasn't a great game last week against Brisbane, but I think this week, looking at those stats and the game against Brisbane last week, compared to when we played Geelong at the MCG not that long ago, there seems to have been a slight shift. I don't know if it's a coincidence, but 339 disposals to Melbourne's 357. 339 is relatively low for us in regards to having our hands on the pill or trying to retain it. I think that's maybe our lowest possession count for the year. And we go right back to that Geelong game, 390 disposals in that game. It was almost like we overused the ball, particularly by hand. And then you look at the kick to handball ratio, and it just felt like even at the game that we were definitely kicking the ball more, and definitely trying to cut down on the uncontested marks. That's what it felt like. I don't know if Melbourne forced us into that, but 217 kicks to 122 handballs. That's a lot different to what we were doing, at the start of the year. It was almost like we were really, really keen to get the ball onto the boot, and give our forwards an opportunity to get one-on-one, but also bring our smalls into the game. And I thought, although Motlop was down, I thought Martin, Durden, and Owies really appreciated that they weren't caught out of position too much because of the overuse of possession. And I just felt we were a little bit more direct and a little bit more chaotic going inside our forward 50, and not letting Melbourne really set up what they like to do. Because I didn't necessarily think, although, Petty defended really well on Curnow, I didn't feel like Lever had a great game. I thought Jack actually did a reasonable job of negating his interceptability. And Harry, I thought, had one of his better games of the year, although May, it was a great tussle. It was a really, really good tussle. So I didn't think their defence, we were able to set up like they like to do, because we were a little bit more unpredictable with the way we moved the ball. Maybe that was just an observation of mine, but just looking at the stats now, when 48 inside 50s to 58 in favour of the Ds, we were more efficient, inside our forward 50 compared to Melbourne. We ran at 52, they ran at 43, efficiency inside 50, which I thought was good. And we ended up getting on top in the clearances. Now, I don't know whether Pitnet just worked his way into the game. I mean, he had his around the ground. I mean, Gawn starting forward, but then really not staying there and drifting up the ground. And it was almost like the D's played Gawn and Jackson as two ruckmen at times, just in different parts of the ground. That's what it felt like. And that is a weapon for them. It really is. They're like two extra midfielders. And Pitt really had his hands full, but I just felt the tide turning in regards to clearances. We ended up winning the centre clearances 10-9, and overall we won the clearances 47-44, which on the night you could see it. You could see it gradually changing, which was great. And I thought, as much as Pitnet has his limitations, and that is around the ground, and there was that one time there where Gorn took that mark inside forward 50, and it was sort of a meek attempt by Pitnet to try and spoil. I don't know. It just gets you thinking about the combination of Pitnet and TDK and if that will ever work. Not saying it won't or can't. It just gets you thinking of what that looks like, and I suppose the excitement of TDK as a player, and I don't know. And I don't think for one second that playing Jack Silvani as a second ruck and a pinch hit in the ruck is sustainable, but maybe it is moving forward. Tackle count was excellent. I mean, 87 tackles for the game. I mean, that just shows you the drop in attitude, I suppose, the drop in work rate, and it just shows you those little things there that every team really is capable of bringing that heat. And we brought that heat against Melbourne. We had to stay in that game. We needed to bring that heat, and I thought our pressure was fantastic. And for the first time this year, which makes me really pleased, and as much that hurt to lose, our ability to absorb Melbourne's pressure was good as well. I know we still have our deficiencies in regards to, our ball use at times. I just thought we handled the pressure a lot more, apart from that fatal last 3 minutes of the game. I'd like to do, I'm going to go through each player, talk about them for this contest. I thought the move of Doherty in the midfield was just really good. We probably had our hands tied, although it would have been easy to keep Dow in there. Would have been simple just to say, okay, we're missing Kennedy, we're missing Hewitt, Chera's out, let's just chuck, Dow in there, and but no. I think that surprised a lot of us that Doc was in there, because he has never really played a lot of midfield, never. And to be perfectly honest, he looked quite at home. 6 clearances, 28 touches, 473 metres gained. It's a reasonable output by Doc in the middle of the ground. I think he lacks a little bit, at times, a little bit of Mr. Sheen, that is, a little bit of polish. But 10 tackles, he's a warrior. Fuck, he's a warrior, Sam Doherty. It just, once again, gets you thinking about, that moving forward into the future. And that experience too, that experience in the middle of the ground. When you try something like that and it appears to work, then you just have to see how it will go the following week. We got a little bit to work with there, because it seems like we are blessed with quite a few sort of half-back flankers and guys that can play in that role. Although we probably, next year we should be fine when we get guys like Boyd back and hopefully Zach Williams. It was a good move. Thought he played exceptionally well. Walsh has had a really interesting year. He got caught quite a bit on Saturday night, and this is not a knock at all. He's probably leading our best and fairest, which is a credit to him, but he's just off. I just feel like he's even off. I don't know. I don't know if the opposition are targeting him a lot more, but he just can't. He just can't seem to break the lines. Really break the lines. 27 touches, only 230 metres gained. He was under the pump all night, Sam Walsh, and it's probably been. It's funny to say it's probably been his worst year, and that's saying something because he's probably right up there in regards to winning the BNF. But he's not, for me. He's not having a great impact on the game, but he's still doing a fair bit right. 6 clearances. Cripper, yeah, I did notice being at the ground, the lack of leg speed when the opposition do have the ball, and his ability to not so much chase because he's laid 12 tackles, so in close he's unbelievable. 10 clearances, 26 touches. He was one of our best, but yeah, we have to. I don't know. There needs to be a balance in there. It worked on Saturday night, but there needs to be a balance with that speed. You know, he does lumber, and that's just him. And yeah, would have liked to have seen, and I probably didn't have the opportunity to do it, but I would like to see us use him a little bit more forward. You know, Setterfield came in and did everything that we, would have hoped. Spent a fair bit of time on Clayton Oliver. I thought had the better of Setterfield, but like we're talking about, arguably, one of the best midfielders in the competition, and Setterfield's come in and probably negated, Oliver to a certain degree. But you look at his metres gained, he kicked the ball really well. I think he ran at something like 85% disposed efficiency by foot. 26 touches, 525 metres gained, 5 clearances, and he's laid 6 tackles. He got his hands dirty, and it just shows you that he's an inside mid. He wants to get his hands dirty. I actually saw him fly the flag a bit too, as well. He showed a little bit of aggression. It took me right back to when he first started at the club, when he laid that big tackle over there at the Gold Coast Suns, where he got reported, and he did show that he was up for the fight, but he's lost his way a little bit. This is just a small step, hopefully, in the re-emergence of Will Setterfield, the player. I'm not saying he's over the line yet, but he'll play this weekend against the Pies, and it's a big opportunity for him. Adam Sard thought he was actually okay. He made a couple of mistakes, some great rundown tackles of Pickett. He's had 22, 18 kicks. A lot was short and a lot were high and bombed around the corner. They're in your face, Melbourne. They really do press and press hard. So he didn't get that. He didn't get that freedom. He skied a lot of the balls really high, and I think there was that time where the only time where he broke free and took a bounce. I don't know how many running bounces Adam Sard had, but he turned it over by foot in the middle of the ground there, and he was okay. We know what he brings to the table at the moment, Adam Sard. He's going to be really significant. I did see they were working on his hamstrings there at one stage, so hopefully, fingers crossed, he's okay. Zach Fisher, I think he's just growing each week. I was seeing a little bit more in his game with his physicality. He kicked that beautiful goal. He kept us in it. I reckon it was a 4-quarter consistent performance. Only had 19 touches, but he probably didn't get the midfield time that we thought he would get. But I think he's growing as a player, and I think he's starting to mature before our eyes. I think he's going to be okay. The one I think's improved the most this year, if we're looking at the most improved player, and the bloke that showed the most amount of growth is Matthew Cottrell. Uses the ball very well on both sides of the body. He's got terrific energy. We know he can run. And the move, I mentioned it in my preview that I thought he would go to Langdon, and it was the perfect matchup on that southern side wing. And he was just, if I was a Melbourne supporter and I didn't know enough about the number 46 or much about him at all, you would have heard the name watching it on TV. And then you see someone from the opposition and go, Jesus, this guy goes all right. He's got some speed. He's in everything. He's playing on Langdon, our best winger, and he's had a really solid game, Matthew Cottrell, and I just think he's starting to get to the right spots and involved in a lot of really effective change for us on Saturday night. Mitch McGovern was unlucky. Not unlucky. You're given a role and you've got to play it, but he had the job on Melksham in the second half, and I don't know. It just showed you how raw and probably inexperienced he is as a defender still. And the amount of times I saw him probably get a little bit lost in the one-on-one defending against Jake Melksham. Interesting move early in the game. He was on Pickett, probably because of the speed. Garvey's great speed. I thought that was actually not a bad matchup early. But, yeah, Melksham was such a presence all night. And he really got under our guard. Mitch McGovern was good early. But he would look back at that now, and he'd look back at the tapes of that second half and the influence that Melksham had on that game. And he'd probably be scratching his head thinking, shit, I just wasn't with him, I just got lost. So I don't think it's a bad thing. He looks super fit at the moment. He looks super fit, and he's kicking his super. 673 metres gained from his 18 disposals, which was clearly in regards to metres gained. And that's his impact. And to ask him to really clamp down on a guy that, to me, and that was a really strange move at halftime, Wiedering off Melksham, although Melksham was causing Wiedering some headaches, to then put Gov on him. I hope I'm getting that right. I was at that end of the ground defensively in that third quarter, and McGovern went to Melksham. Definitely went to Melksham because Wiedering had him early. Lewis Young, outstanding. I thought he was clearly our best defender, and it was great to see him hit back. Started on Gawn and ended up on Brown for most of the night, and made life pretty hard for Ben Brown, who has, let's face it, has done a number on us before when he was at North Melbourne. He's got a hold of us. To see Lewis Young play the way he did and still win, enough of the ball himself, 9 marks, 18 disposals. Thought he used it relatively well. Thought it was a really good game. Jack Silvani, this isn't a knock. This isn't a knock at all, because I understand he's playing, he has to go into the ruck, and what's he had, 7? What do you have? Do you have any hit-outs, Jack? Yeah, he had 6 hit-outs. I thought he competed pretty well in there. He's had, he's had 7 clearances, which is bloody good, really. I don't know. When I look at those hybrid forwards, Fritsch had a poor night for Melbourne. I thought Marchbank was excellent on him. I see those hybrid forwards and that point of difference. It's like a point of difference. Blokes who are exceptional off the deck, but lose their opponents and mark on a lead or use their body. Melksham, Fritsch. And then I look at Jack, and that's what I want Jack to be. And I know he's not that. I know he's not necessarily being used in that role at the moment, but he did kick a nice goal around the body. He did feed one off. I think it was to Fisher for Fisher's goal. I think. But I looked at his across. They put his stats up on the board. He's played 98 games now, Jack Silvani, and he's only kicked, I think, 73 goals. Across his career, and he's played a large chunk of that time forward. I can't but feel where that if we're going to take that next step forward, that we'll need a Fritsch or a Jake Melksham. That bloke that can really disrupt a Jamie Elliott type that can really disrupt. They're not necessarily going to have big games every week, but they're going to be a match winner at times. And that I just don't feel Jack's. We don't need him to be a match winner, but every now and then we really need him to kick some goals. Yeah, and I know we got one out of him, but I don't know. That's just the way I see it. Liam Stocker, I thought he worked into the game quite well. I didn't feel their smalls had really any huge impact on the game. Was it Spargo, Neil Bullen, Keziah Pickett, I know he kicked that goal late, but Newtons was on him there, but I thought Stocker was quite good. Actually thought he used the ball quite well. There was a good time there where we started to see his little bit of intercepting ability with his marking, which I think has improved over the course of the year in the VFL. Good to see him in there. It would be good to see him playing against Collingwood this weekend and see if he can improve on that performance. Charlie's just battling at the moment. He's been clamped down on. Petty was tremendous on Charlie. Tremendous. Did a really good job. Just a little bit of energy with Charlie at the moment, just watching him live and watching him last week. Just a little bit of energy has been lost, and that comes, I think, with being really, really, being watched closely. And I think Charlie's getting the no frills defender whose role is to really just do that. And he's finding it hard to work through at the moment, but we saw what he was capable of late in the game. He's kicked 1 goal for. He still had 14 disposals. But yeah, he's probably not having the impact on the scoreboard like he did earlier on in the year, but he'll work through that and hopefully he can have a big one against the Pies this weekend. Newtons, I mentioned it before. I just gobsmacked to the amount of the abuse that was thrown his way. And look, he's no superstar. There's a reason he's playing. Maybe his experience. He can play a role. He has got the right mindset and mentality to do that. Sure, he's not the most skilled player. Pickett got him there at the end, but that's the way it goes. Thought O'Brien was poor. I thought Jordan clearly had the better of him. That was a really disappointing game by Lockie O'Brien. I know the wing would be a very difficult place to play, but I thought his ball use was poor. 173 metres gain. There was an inside 50 there in the third, the last quarter, which he completely butchered. And I hear these things that he's an elite kick and this and that. I'm not sold on Lockie O'Brien as an AFL footballer by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's just got far too many things that he needs to work on. He's been given opportunities. But that wasn't a great game. Durden, thought he was really busy, kicked a goal, got his hands dirty. I think his kicking will improve. I think he's an elite kick. I think he's going to be one of the really best kicks in our football team, but probably just not getting the time at the moment. Thought he was okay. Marchbank I thought was excellent. Started really well. He had the job on Fritsch for most of the night, and Fritsch has been a handful. So all those crying out that Plowman should be in the team because he can play in the likes of Fritsch. Well, there's a small answer to what Callum Marchbank can do. He can play a little bit, he can play on that hybrid. I thought he was good. I thought he was really good in that regard. And what's he strung now together? A couple of games, and the more games they string together, you start to forget about, their injuries from the past. So fingers crossed with Callum Marchbank. Harry, I actually thought it was his best game for the year. Physically strong, on a quality opponent, great tussle, kicked some goals, presented hard, worked his backside off, pushed up the ground. Just thought it was a pretty good performance by Harry. He's the same. It was probably Durden. He's got his limitations. He's a little bit one-paced, but you understand why he's in the team at the moment. He's forward half pressure. He does give us some energy up there. Jack Martin, clearly the best game for the year, and he looked dangerous. He looked dangerous in that role. He He made life difficult for the Melbourne defenders. He was clean and kicked the ball well, but that's one game from Jack Martin. And we need him to produce that on a more regular basis in a really difficult part of the ground to play, which is that high half forward role. A little bit hit and miss. Wiedering's down. Simple as that. Just down. In that first quarter, I'm sitting at the punt road end, level 1, and I said to my mum, look at the size of him. Of a individual, Jacob Wiedering. And I wrote something down in regards to Jacob Wiedering. This is only just a thought. He's a physical beast, and I'm not saying for 1 minute that he's not a hard footballer for 1 minute, but I don't know. He just doesn't. He's just been beaten a little bit too easily, and I just looked at it's not poor body language, but I don't know. Right here, right now, I just feel like he's a bit of a textbook leader, Jacob Wiedering. That might be a little bit hard. So what I mean by textbook leader, but does he really have the feel of what it is to be a strong leader out on the ground? I don't feel that with him at the moment. I just don't feel it with him at the moment. And I think he's had an up and down season, has had his injuries, but he ain't in good form at the moment. And did we necessarily have a matchup for him against Melbourne? That was another thing. Melksham, who gave him the runaround, and he's potentially going to have Jamie Elliott this week, or someone of that ilk, or if Cox goes forward if he plays. It's a big game for Jacob Wiedering this week against the Pies. I'm sure he'll be able to hit back. And I saw signs last week against Brisbane that that he was starting to show a little bit more. I'm sure he'll be okay, but he's not the player that we thought he would become this year. We'll just have to wait and see. Anyway, guys, that's enough from me. That's a pretty long preview. I'm relatively upbeat. As much as that was a painstaking night, I feel like we're getting a little bit right here with this football club, and I don't like pointing the fingers at opposition clubs. It's not my style. But I did watch the second half of the Essendon Port Adelaide game. I watched which game did I watch yesterday afternoon? Yeah, the Collingwood Sydney game. Obviously, I watched. Then we're going to have our hands full with the Pies, no doubt about that. But then I turned it over for the second half of Port Adelaide, and I just looked at Essendon, and it just brought back memories, a lot of memories of us, even 12 months ago. No fight. I don't know, just nothing. And looking at their crowd sitting in the stands there and being completely embarrassed by Port Adelaide, who weren't even in contention to play finals themselves. And, guys like Finlayson just running around doing what he liked. And, yeah, I just thought, we're okay. We're okay at the moment. As much as that hurt on Saturday night, I think we're getting a lot right behind the scenes, which will drive this club forward. And I'm 100% sure that, from the president to the CEO to the coach, that they know what they're doing. They will know what they're doing to get us to where we want to go. However, there's always however. Is this group of players, is this the ones, okay, or are we going to have to bring more in? I will only tell. Speak soon.